Oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is in attendance except for Councillor Ham, and she sent her regrets earlier. We'll now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda, please.
That Council adopts the agenda for the meeting of June 21st, 2021 as presented.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we do have two delegations this evening. For the first delegation, Christine Scrimgeour, she's here to do the presentation of the audited 2020 financial statements for the town of Aylmer. So we welcome Christine this evening. How are you, Christine? It's nice to see you.
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
And we'll turn the floor over to you, Christine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will do my presentation as I normally do, going through each page of the financial statements. If you have any questions at all as I'm going through, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask. Questions are always good and brings greater understanding of them. So these are the consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. They are in draft format at this point in time, as I'll remind council, until those charged with governance under the Canadian auditing standards, which would be this council, approves them, then they become final, and we will then assist your staff in getting the FIR filed with the province. So going into the financial statements on my page 1, so the next page, please. I'm not sure who's controlling that. It's probably Josh controlling the screen. So this is your auditor's opinion. So this is where I'm saying that I agree with the numbers in these financial statements to a materiality. So materiality for the town of Aylmer for 2020 was $195,000. However, that doesn't mean I only look at transactions over $195,000. Every transaction that flows through the municipality is eligible for a statistical sampling. We sample through taxation, revenue, through other revenue, through your expenses, and through your payroll. So we do all the systems in the town in order to base this opinion on. And it is dated, as I mentioned, as of today's date, which hopefully is the date they get approved. Moving forward to the my page 3, so the next page, please. There we go. Great, thank you. So this is your consolidated statement of financial position, and some of you may be familiar with the terminology balance sheet. And I'll remind council what's consolidated in these financial statements because it is a little bit different. So we do eliminate 50% of the East Elgin complex because it is owned 1/2 by Malahide, and so we take out 50% of their transactions. We then add in the BIA, which is not consolidated in your books, in your records. They're a separate set of books and records. And then in addition to that, we add in the Aylmer area secondary water system because you are use approximately 97% of that total system flows through town of Aylmer. So that's what the word consolidated means on these financial statements. About 3/4 of the way down the page, there's a line called net financial assets, and that's usually the line that I draw your attention to first. So that would be the money that you would have in the bank at the end of the day if everybody paid you what they owed you and you paid off all of your debts. And as you can see, I like to see that number stay consistent or increase, and as you can see, it has increased by about $2.5 million, and we'll see that when we get to the reserves that money is stayed in the reserves. Other items of note on that financial statement or on this coming down to that balance, you did not take out any new long-term debt during the year, so you'll see your debt is decreasing, and that's important when we get to capital. And then as well, the bank balance has increased significantly, but a lot of that is just, you'll see the accounts payable have gone down about $700,000 there. And that's because of, I'll remind council, at the end of 2019, we were still finalizing the Talbot Street reconstruction. And so that we had large outstanding accounts payable on that project. And as well, if we come down to the non-financial assets, you'll see work in progress at the end of last year. That 9.7 million, about 6 million of that was that Talbot Street project that was not yet completed. The last coat and all of the deficiencies were done in the beginning of 2020. The non-financial assets are just what they sound like. They're all your capital assets that are in place in order to provide your services. And so we always look to make sure that you are maintaining your capital assets at the same level as last year. So I add the tangible capital assets with the work in progress to come up with what you have invested in total in capital assets. It has gone down a bit, and that in some circumstances would be of concern to me, because what that means is that you're not replacing your assets at the same value that you are amortizing them. So the amortization is what you're using up, sort of that as they're getting older, they amortize over that life of the asset. However, because of COVID, you were not able to get all the projects started at the same time as you had originally budgeted. In fact, I heard you talking before we went on there about Clarence Street, and that really is the big project. So that was budgeted to be done in 2020. It was not, it was just started, and it was a budget of about 1.2 million. And so if you add that to your tangible capital assets, you would have been, if you had been able to complete that project, you would have in fact replaced your assets over your amortization value. So that's why I say I'm not concerned about it this year. Coming down to your accumulated surplus overall of 79.6 million compared to 78.2 million last year. And as you can see, the majority of that surplus is in your tangible capital assets. Any questions on that? I know that's a lot of accounting jargon, but okay, seeing none, I'll continue on. So this is your consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. It shows the budget for 2020 versus the actual for 2020, and then your actual for 2019. I'll comment on some of the increases and decreases just for council's review. In total, we budgeted just under 13 million in revenue. And in fact, our total operating revenue was 13.5 million. There's a couple reasons for that. One was, and I'm seeing this throughout my municipalities, water and wastewater, because a lot of people were home more in 2020, obviously. Water and wastewater rates, are not the rates themselves, but the usage was up across the board. And those increases stay in the water and sewer surpluses. So they don't come through the tax rate, but they are included in that user charges number. And then government grants, it looks like it's decreased, and that's because we've taken out the Malahide grant. So in your budget, you have that Malahide grant for the half of the EECC. We've removed that, as I mentioned at the beginning. However, we also received the Safe Restart grant this year that we did not budget for, and that was that provincial COVID funding that we got. You can also see investment income. We continue to enjoy good returns despite the decrease in the interest rate, which we're all aware of. So overall, those increases and decreases make up in 13.5 million for 2020. Under expenditures, I'll remind council that in the budget, we do not budget for amortization. So amortization, as I kept mentioning, is that using up of those capital assets. And in 2020, your amortization costs, so it's included in the actual 2020, but not the budget, was 1.7 million. It was the same in 2019, around the same amount. And so you can see your expenditures, although some increases and decreases between the various functions. In total, your total operating expenditures last year were 12.3 million and 12.3 million again in 2020. So really consistent with that amortization added in. That next line is the line that I'm always interested in. So that shows that your operating revenues are covering your operating expenditures, plus that using up that amortization. And so you'll see that we're just over $1.1 million there in actual 2020. Everything below that line relates to capital or items that do not affect your day-to-day operations. And so we separate them out so that you can see what your operating surplus is. The other revenue there, government grants, developer and other contributions related to capital investment, which obviously comes from the Earth financial statements that we receive. And then the gain loss on disposal of capital assets. That loss on capital assets looks like a very large number, and that's because we, with the replacement of Talbot Street, we removed the old Talbot Street assets in our system. And so that doesn't flow through to the tax rate, that stays in the capital surplus.
Christine, I believe Councillor Chapman has a question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Chapman.
I don't have a question. I just need a minute. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry about that, Christine. I wasn't sure if she had a question for you.
That's fine.
Okay.
Do you want me to continue? Do you want me to wait?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, all right. So then our other revenue is about 209,000, coming down to net revenue for the year of 1.3 million. And then that coming down to the accumulated surplus at the end of the year, 79,601,328, which equaled the balance sheet. Any questions at all on that? Okay. The next statement is your consolidated statement of cash flows, and this shows your increases and decreases of your non-cash items on the balance sheet. And I have spent a fair bit of time going through these, so I won't spend a lot more time here, other than to say that so the second line down is that amortization number that I kept talking about of just about 1.7 million. And then the acquisition of the new assets versus the decrease in the work in progress. And then that loss from the disposal of Talbot Street. Obviously, we're not able to sell those assets that we disposed of there. Coming down to cash and cash equivalents of 12.1 million versus 9.8 million last year. And then the next statement, which is just a statement of change in net financial assets, is just really the same numbers that we just talked about, all the increases and decreases in that tangible capital asset balance. So again, I'll go through that. I've gone through that, I think, fairly well. Then we get to the notes to the financial statements. So these notes are standard notes that you'll see in any municipal financial statements. Note 1A basically tells you the various consolidated entities in these financial statements. I know you're also approving the EECC financial statements tonight, as well as the police services. And they, I've met with both of those boards to go through those statements, and they've approved them at their level for your review. Continuing on to the notes for the financial statements, I'll bring forth a couple other. Note number 4, just to remind council that in addition to the revenue that you see on the financial statements, there's another almost $6 million that flows through the town's offices that your staff is responsible for on behalf of the county and school boards for collection purposes and billing. Note number 5 just shows the increase in the investment in Earth Corporation. So we own 15.02% of that corporation and recognize that a portion of their revenue. We also received, as you're well aware, a dividend this year. Note 6 just shows you the amount that the town is responsible for your share of the owner's pension. It's a matching pension. Note 7, it relates to the post-retirement benefit liability. So that's the liability that we have for those employees that are able to continue on benefits past their retirement date until they turn 65 years old. And as you can see, the police services is the majority of that amount. Note 8 is your deferred revenue. So these are reserve funds that you don't have, council cannot change purpose of. So they're called obligatory reserve funds because of that. You'll see there that we've deferred 42,000 of the Safe Restart money. OCIF, the building department maintains their own surplus as well. Federal gas tax, and then the development charges coming down to 2.5 million. And again, because we didn't do that Clarence Street, the OCIF money was not used. The next note is your long-term liabilities. And again, just reiterating that there's no, although we purchased a lot of new capital assets this past year, there was no new debt taken out. So that's obviously a great result. Coming through to the accumulated surplus. So this is really probably the note that that council is most interested in. This breaks down that surplus, that 79 million, between the various components. And as you can see, this is where I wanted to comment. The reserve fund set aside for specific purpose, you'll see there 6.6 million last year, 8.7 million this year. And you'll see that the water and wastewater, as I mentioned, that increase in rates went through to their reserves at the end of the year. So you'll see a significant increase there, both in replacement for the sewer systems and the water systems. And I don't have a lot to say on the rest of the notes unless anyone has any specific questions. Note 15, it just continues on the whole COVID that you followed provincial orders regarding closing the facilities as required, and that you did recognize some revenue under government grants for that Safe Restart funding. At the back of the statements are 2 schedules. One breaks down your tangible capital assets by component. And you'll see there the linear assets. So that would be your water, wastewater, and roads and connected services. 65 million of your $89 million cost. So significant percentage there. And then the next biggest one would be the buildings. And then the last schedule is required because it ties these financial statements into the FIR that's filed with this province. And so it breaks it down by function, which is what the FIR is broken down. So it shows revenues and expenses based on those functions. And that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Are there any questions for Christine? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Christine. Christine, would you consider this to be a clean audit?
Yes, I would. Yes, definitely. My auditor's opinion wouldn't be unqualified if it wasn't.
Yeah, thank you.
Your Worship?
Councillor Oslach.
Yeah, Your Worship, to Christine. How does our audit stack up against other municipalities? Are we doing well? Are we doing not so good? Are we failing? In your opinion?
So I would just reiterate what I said. You've got strong reserves, and obviously projects within the water wastewater areas are always concerns going forward, because the costs of doing extensions and replacements and upgrades are always very expensive in those areas. But your reserves are growing in that area, and I would encourage council to continue in that path. Because as we're all aware, I'm not sure how much funding is going to be out there for projects such as that right now from the government. But so your reserves, your debt level is extremely low compared to other municipalities. So that's a great thing to have. And I would just encourage council, as I mentioned on the first statement, to just continue to reinvest in your capital assets so that you don't get hit at some point with a very big capital asset year where you have to take out debt and financing. And so your policy of putting money aside every year towards future capital is excellent.
Okay, are there any further questions for Christine? Seeing none. Thanks again, Christine. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mayor French, if I could.
Certainly.
I just wanted to thank Christine for all of her help, because she was constantly sharing her expertise and knowledge with the rest of the finance team and giving us examples and best practices from other municipalities. So I just wanted to thank her and her team for that.
Okay. Thanks, Heather. Andy, did you have anything?
Sorry, I just have one other comment on that, what Heather just said. So I want to thank Heather as well. This sounds like it's a love fest, but I do want to thank Heather as well, just because she came in at a time when the year was really done and you're trying to finish up a set of financial statements of a prior treasurer. So it was just, and CAO had left as well, so who had a lot of financial background from previous years. So it was an exercise in patience for all of us, and it worked well. And just want to thank Heather. She's going to be a great asset to the town for sure.
Thank you, Christine. Any further comments? Okay, Andy, did you have anything further to add? Okay, I don't think he does. Okay, well, thanks again, Christine.
Sorry,
sorry.
Mayor,
Do you have? Okay.
sorry, Mayor French. Yeah, just to thank both Heather and Christine. I know it was a very chaotic, but it really has helped us build towards our new budget processes for next year to try to get everything condensed. And it's really great to get this audit done and before council. And thank you. It wouldn't have been possible without both of you.
Okay, thanks so much, Christine.
All right, I'll leave you, everyone. I hope you all stay well. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, Christine. Josh, could you read the resolution for me, please?
Certainly, through you, that council receives the delegation from Christine Scrimger of Scrimger and Company regarding the audited 2020 financial statements for information.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Chapman. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Daleen Van Ziel. She's the branch supervisor for the Aylmer Library, and she's here this evening to share the 2020 to 2021 update. So welcome, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me here to present you with what was happening at the library during the last year. I think at the beginning of 2020, like everybody else, we could not foresee what was going to happen during the year. We were all set and ready to have a very successful year at the library, and then ready to start our annual March break program, and then the library was closed over the weekend of March the 13th. If I can just have the next page, please. And at that time, we thought it was just going to be for 2 weeks. Well, it wasn't until June the 22nd, which tomorrow is a year tomorrow, that we could start up with some kind of service again. At that time, the library, Alma Library, was only open for 4 hours a week. And over the next 3 months, staff was brought back to work. And by September 2020, Alma Library had a full staff complement back at work, and the number of open hours had been increased to about 50% of the pre-COVID hours. In the almost year since the library has been allowed to be open, the level of service that could be provided expanded and was scaled back according to provincial lockdown measures. But the library never completely closed down again and could keep on offering some level of service to the patrons and the community. And the photo on that page is when we started with the curbside pickup back in June last year, and we did it at the back door of the library. Next page, please. So first thing I look at over the year was the circulation statistics, and the limited hours of operations plus the limitation on the level of service had an impact on circulation statistics. Patrons were not only limited to the hours they could visit the library, but had to rely on staff to pick materials for them if they did not have access to the technology to use the library's online catalog. And in this community, that is a big part of the community. Despite this, the Alma branch circulation kept steady at an average of 40% of the total circulation of all the branches of the Elkin County Library System, which is up from about 35% pre-COVID. In the current year, up to June, our library patrons have checked out an average of 3,500 items per month, which is as about 60% of the branch's pre-COVID circulation. And even though circulation statistics can never be used as a true picture of a library's services, because the library is so much more than just circulating books, these figures show that the Alma Library is still very much used and appreciated in this community, and it shows the support of our patrons. Online presence. With the library's doors closed, patrons had to rely on Elkin County Library's online resources for reading materials and online reference databases. Fortunately, the library already had subscriptions to a balanced collection of online products, and patrons could immediately start using these resources. Patrons had access to EBSCO for reference and information, Overdrive and Hoopla for ebooks and audiobooks, and Canopy for movies. It is therefore no surprise that the digital checkouts in 2020 were 57% higher than in 2019. In the fall of 2020, Press Reader was added to the collection, thus making digital copies of the current and older issues of Canadian and international magazines and newspapers available to our patrons. A very important addition was the addition of mobile printing, which made it possible for patrons to print from any mobile device or computer from outside the library and pick up the printed documents during the library's open hours. Especially with curbside service, that is very important for our patrons. They can just bring in the cell phone and print from the cell phone. Next page, please. In May 2020, the last remaining old carpet was replaced, and with that, the renovation project that was started 3 years ago was completed. The layout of the adult fiction and non-fiction collection shelves was changed to provide better illumination between the stacks, make it easier for patrons to social distance when allowed back in the library, and provide a better line of sight into the stacks for staff. In June 2021, just a week ago, the condition of the book drop at the back of the library made it necessary to replace it. The book drop in the front of the library will be replaced before the end of the year to facilitate the volume of book returns. These county-led improvements join those made recently by the town to improve accessibility. And next page. Programming. With the library closed, we couldn't go with our normal programs, and we had to come up with new ways to provide programs for all our patrons. After the success of the September 29, 2019 quilt show during Culture Days, the decision was made to follow that up with a virtual quilt show on Facebook. This show was very popular and garnered positive comments the whole month long. By going virtual, a bigger audience was reached and was hopefully a step forward to getting the Alma Library Quilt Show established as an annual event. Library staff got creative and put together crafts for parents to take home for kids to assemble. These crafts have become very popular, and parents and grandparents alike ask for them while picking up books. In between March the 2nd and May the 31st, over 400 of these take and make bags have been picked up at the Alma Library. Next page. Thanks. The take and make craft bags also provided the library with a means to reach out to the community. Library staff worked with the creation team at Terrace Lodge to design and create crafts for the residents there. Residents could, with the help of these crafts, use their artistic and creative talents to decorate the rooms or the common areas of the home. A box of the craft bags was also shared with the Mennonite Community Services, and they gave these to parents who used their services. These bags contained information about the library and welcomed the parents to get library cards and use the library services. Those pictures on the page were from taken at Terrace Lodge with the residents there using the bags. And then the next page, please. Plans for the future. During phase 1 of the Ontario government's reopening plan, patrons will be able to return to the library to use the library's computers, and open hours will be increased to 75% of pre-COVID hours. Phase 2 of the plan will see our patrons have the ability to return to indoor services and browse the collection. The Summer Reading Club will start at the beginning of July and run till the end of August. The emphasis this summer will be on the family, and the programs were designed and planned around the family as a team, with a goal to make the summer as much fun as possible for the children in the community and keep them reading, of course. We all hope that by fall we can return to a normal life, and we do not know what the future has in store for us. But at the Alma Library, we can only keep on doing what we do best: support our patrons and the community we serve. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments concerning this report? Okay, seeing none. I do want to thank you for coming in and updating us. And I've had the chance to speak to this earlier at County Council, but I have to say that all the library staff have really come up with some innovative ideas. So kudos to you for all the work that you do in the community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me tonight.
And you have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, could you read the resolution, please?
Certainly, through you, that council receives the delegation from Daleen Van Zyl, branch supervisor, regarding the Elmer Old Town Hall Library 2020 to 2021 update for information.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Barber, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is minutes to approve.
That council approves the following minutes. regular virtual meeting of council held on June 7th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next item up is minutes to receive.
That council receives the following minutes. Elmer Cemetery Board held on March 23rd, 2021. East Elgin Community Complex Board meeting held on June 2nd, 2021. And Elmer Police Services Board meeting held on May 11th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is consent agenda.
That item 7.1 to 7.14 of the June 21st, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, I guess before we look for a mover and seconder, just is there anything anybody wants to pull, I guess, so that we can talk about it? Okay, so someone to move and second then? Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Charlton. Okay, are there any questions or comments about the consent items? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into action items. The first item is OPNS 1221.
That report operations 1221 entitled Equipment Replacement, Four-Wheel Drive Articulating Sidewalk Unit, Trackless Vehicle, be received for information, and that council accepts the offer from Trackless Vehicles Limited for a rebuilt MT57 four-wheel drive articulating sidewalk unit in the amount of $135,945 plus tax, and further that council approve of a single source exemption to permit staff to proceed with the procurement from Trackless Vehicles Limited of Cortland, Ontario.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Oslach. Is Connor on the meeting this evening, or Rob Johnson, are you going to be talking to this?
I can, Your Worship.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Did you want to give us a bit more information, please?
Certainly. As the council is aware, the replacement of this vehicle was included in the 2021 municipal budget. This is one of the most versatile pieces of equipment that we have at the Public Works Yard. It's a four-season machine. It's built for municipal service, from winter control on sidewalks to leaf and yard waste pickup in the fall, as well as grass cutting all summer long. This is one of the most versatile, hardest working pieces of equipment that we have. You can see that the staff reached out to Trackless to anticipate the replacement of the machine, and we became aware of a sort of a buyback or a refurbishment policy that we have. It looks like everything in that refurbishment meets our needs, and they're pricing the refurbishment fairly aggressive right now. So we think that probably the refurbishment is the way to go at this time, and it saves us about $30,000, and all the new all the previous attachments fit the new machine.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Councillor Barber and then Councillor Charlton.
Thank you, Worship. To Rob, are they rebuilding our existing Trackless, or is this a different one? And just shuffling them around a bit?
That's probably a better description. They will be shuffling them around a bit. They're going to take ours, they'll rebuild our machine for a future sale, and we'll be getting one that's refurbished. I will say that they've been doing this for a few years, and they used to do, as you described, take the person's machine back, refurbish it, and give it back to them, is my understanding. They have since found that their assembly line, they're more suited to take almost a new cab and chassis off the line, if you will, and then refurbish it with the parts and put it in. So as it's shown in the report, we're getting the better part of an M7 tractor, and they're calling it an M57 with the trade-in of our machine, if that answers the councillor's question.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Charlton.
Yes, through your worship to Rob. Yeah, I think it's a great move and a great company to work with, and we're saving $30,000 and we're getting a great machine. So good move. Thanks.
Thank you. If I could add to that, they are really a good company to work with. They're just down the road, as council is aware. They're in Cortland. When you need a service call or something like that, you're not going out of province for parts or out of the state, into the States for parts. They'll send a service person. I know even last winter when we said we need this machine up and running, I would say within 2 hours, they had somebody at our door working on it to get us back onto the road. So they're a great company to work with as well, as you mentioned, Councillor Charles.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Chapman.
What kind of, through you, your worship, what kind of warranty comes with this refurbished?
It's the same warranty they provide as if we had bought a brand new machine. So they're all perfectly equal. Yep.
Okay, anything further? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Plan 0121.
That report, Planning 0121, entitled Applications for Consent to Sever, numbers E4021 and E4121, 92 Myrtle Street, be received for information, and that the application for consent to sever number E4021 relating to lands known municipally as 92 Myrtle Street be supported for reasons set out in the report, Plan 0121, and that the application for consent to sever number E4121 relating to property known municipally as 92 Myrtle Street be supported for reasons set out in report Plan 0121, and further that this report be forwarded to the Land Division Committee by the County of Elgin for its review and consideration.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Christy, would you mind giving us an overview of your report, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this evening in front of Council, we have two applications for consent. They both pertain to the same property, so we've combined the report into a single report for consideration. These applications will be heard at the June 23rd meeting of Land Division Committee. So as Josh had noted, these applications both apply to 92 Myrtle Street. So there were two existing lots of record. What the applicant is proposing to do is sever each of those existing lots to create 4 total lots. Josh, the key map, if you could just pull that up so I can refer to it quickly. So as you can see, the subject parcel is outlined in red. The red line down the center is what was legally existing, and now the applicant is proposing just to sever those again in half. So at the present, there are 2 semi-detached dwellings on each of the existing lots. The intent of the severance will be to create 1 lot of each semi-detached dwelling on each of the 4 lots. So there'll be 4 dwellings on 4 individual lots. These applications were reviewed against the county's official plan, the town's official plan, the town zoning bylaw, and I'm satisfied that the proposal aligns with the applicable policies and regulations. Based on this, I'm recommending that council offer support for the applications and that this resolution be forwarded to Land Division Committee. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Are there any questions for Christy? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item is CAO 2521.
That the memo respecting the proposed memorandum of understanding, Town of Elmer / Elmer Police Service be received as information, and further that council approve the memorandum of understanding.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Barber. Andy, did you have anything further to add to the report?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just at a high level, looking at the relationship between the Elmer Police Service and the town of Elmer, it really seems to be a very efficient process. There's just great benefits to the community in terms of the added level of policing that we have around. So it's a great relationship, and what we really wanted to do was to solidify how it's been operating with just some minor adjustments in a memorandum of understanding. And this is kind of what this document would do. And it's also not legally binding. So if there's a need to adjust, it's meant to be a very flexible approach and to give each party kind of a better level of comfort with the continued relationship. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there questions for Andy on this report? Councillor Chapman?
Through you, your worship. So is this a new thing, like, or is this happened in the past?
Through you, your worship, good question. It is a new thing. We haven't had a general agreement in place before. You don't necessarily need one, but since we do a lot of the books for the police service, it's good to have it kind of clearly written out what we're going to do. Right now, at this point, I myself sign off on expenditures for the police service. So that's not technically in fitting with the Police Services Act. So we want that to go to the police or to the Police Services Board, and then the town can just focus on our stuff. Not that I would ever interfere with the administration of justice, but there is a potential that a CAO could do that.
Are there any further questions for Andy? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is CAO 2721.
That report CAO 2721 respecting the asset disposal policy be received for information, and that council approve the asset disposal policy.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. It's a fairly straightforward report, but Andy, did you have anything extra you wanted to add?
Through your worship, just this is a largely housekeeping. A lot of municipalities will have this included directly in their procurement policies. We do not. So we do need to have some policy in place to enshrine what we're actually currently doing for the most part.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Are there any questions for Andy? Okay, sorry, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report suggests that the policy in the future be that staff would not have the option of or the ability to purchase surplus the equipment. Is that really the best way to go when it's sold through other sources? There's a commission fee, I believe, involved. Would it not make more fluid sense to on those low ticket items to retain that ability to sell to staff?
Through your worship, so there is one proposed exemption to allow items under $300 potentially to be sold to staff if they're on some kind of flexible work arrangement, but we would still need to bring that option forward when council considers the moves to things like a 4-day work week. But we want to very much limit it to very specific circumstances, because there is a tendency sometimes in the general public that if we're selling to the staff to go, well, you're giving the town staff a better deal than anybody else, and sometimes the perception of impropriety, we could be making more money off of that than we'd ever get under gov deals, but it's just a perception is something that we need to avoid as municipal government.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is CAO 2821.
That report CAO 2821 respecting the Earth Service Agreement Plan be received as information, and that council approve a single source exemption to the procurement policy to allow staff to enter into an agreement with Earth for the provision of water and wastewater billing and related services, and further that council Consider waiving the rules of order to adopt a bylaw to enter into the agreement with Earth effective date of July 1st, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews. I'll turn this over to you, Andy. You may want to give a bit more information to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report, we've had an existing service relationship with Earth for our water billing and wastewater billing for some time. We have an ability now to get a preferred rate of 75 cents less a bill. And we're suggesting that we take that at this time. If we had more time, we might go out and look at an RFP, but we already do have a very close relationship with Earth. And we're hoping to build upon that relationship. You might have seen the chargers that went up in the municipal lot. And we're also looking to hopefully try to partner with them on some solar energy or renewable energy projects as the government is starting to lay those out. So this might open our foot, put our foot in the door towards further initiatives with Earth. And we really do think that this is a good deal and a savings. One of the issues that we have is we don't know what exactly the savings will be in this year. Part of that has to deal with the move to switch to paperless billing, in which case we would save even more money. So Earth is planning to try to encourage residents to take that option. Up to now, you've had to opt in, and it might be that you have to opt out of electronic billing in the future. So we're going to try to partner with Earth when they're outlining that process and trying to encourage it, because it will also save us a lot of money in the end. There could be some added cost in terms of staff time, and there will be added cost in terms of staff time for chasing down water arrears, which is something that we'll have to look at and make sure our processes really mesh with Earth. So there will be a bit of a transition period as we go to this new contract. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Other questions for Andy? Councillor Charlton.
So through your worship, so how's the billing done now, and who does it, and what's the big change here?
Through your worship. So currently it's done by Earth directly. They also do at this point water meter checks and arrears. They don't have the ability to put arrears on the tax roll as a municipality does. We do within our bylaw have that ability. So what happens when Earth can't collect a fee, we don't currently feel the impact of that, because we're getting paid from them the full amount for the fees, even if they're not paid to Earth. So that's one of the fundamental changes, is that we're only going to get the money from Earth that they actually receive now. And that'll have a big impact on us, because we'll have to pick up that collection side within our staff. And then the other aspect of it is they aren't going to do the meter checks. Now, hopefully that isn't too big of a change because of all the smart meters that have come into effect since 2011. So hopefully we don't have to send out our staff a lot to do that, but that's kind of the transition. But we've had an ongoing service relationship with Earth for some time, and Earth, as Mayor French will likely tell you, providing these kind of customer service and billing services is becoming more and more key to Earth's game now, and they're really becoming an industry leader in it. So it's something that we know that if we took it on, we could take it on, but it would take some challenges for us to get our processes in place to do it right. And we think we've got too many things going on right now to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. To Andy, as the explanation that was just given, in the future, the uncollected service fees will now be the responsibility of the town. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes. So now anything after, I believe you're shut down after 30 days of non-payment. And then after 60 days, the bill would get sent to us to collect. And we would just automatically place that amount on the property tax. So there is a potential that right now, landlords might not be paying for tenants that are in arrears, but that would change.
Do we have any idea what the percentage of bad debt is?
We don't have a good picture of that right now because Earth is the one that's assuming that bad debt. So that is part of the change that we're undergoing. I can inquire from them and see if they have more information to share though.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 2521.
That report, Clerk 2521, entitled 25 Center Street Renovation Project Update, be received for information. And that council provides an exemption to the procurement policy to accept the fee proposal, building, structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services from Strict, Baldinelli, and Monez, dated June 16th, 2021. And further, that council directs staff to proceed with option blank as outlined in report Clerk 2521.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Josh, did you want to give us an overview? Because there's quite a bit of information here and maybe we just need a clearer explanation, please.
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, as a follow-up to direction from the April 19th regular meeting of council, staff solicited an engineering proposal from Strict, Baldinelli, and Monez for the provision of engineering services for the 25 Center Street renovation project. At the time, it was noted that once a proposal was received by staff, it would be brought back to council for final consideration. Within the proposal that's attached to the report, an itemized fee schedule outlines services that will be required and also services that are a la carte throughout the project phase. So staff have taken a look at those, myself and the CBO, and we've come to agreement that the estimated cost for engineering services for this type of proposal will likely be somewhere in the ballpark of $30,000, which we understand to be fairly typical for this type of project. Just understanding the scope of it and the breadth of service that they'd be providing. Also, council will recall that the 2021 project list allocates $280,000 to this project specifically, in addition to outstanding project funding, which we applied for in late 2020. We're waiting to hear back, and we're quite hopeful that we'll be successful on that project funding in the amount of $107,000. Pending council approval of the engineering proposal, the next step would be establishing the timeline by which the project would be tendered and construction would commence. Staff have provided two options in the report. At this time, the recommendation is to defer the issuance of the tender to the fall season. And the rationale for that deferral really has to do with allowing some more time for the price of construction materials and related commodities to continue to decline, as we've seen happen even in the last 2 weeks. And then moving on as well, staff believe that by deferring this project to the winter months, we may be more seasonally competitive when tendering for the project, and more specifically with the majority of the work required for the 25 Center Street renovation project being indoors. Certain local contractors or contractors interested in bidding on the project may see that as a good opportunity to extend their working season, and we may find that we have more competitive pricing if we can hold off for a few more months. And moving on as well, council may also wish to consider adopting the proposal and directing staff to proceed with tender issuance as soon as possible. At this point, we would only be relying on some assistance from the engineering firm to finalize the preparation of the tender documents and for staff to issue them and issue them in accordance with the town's purchasing policy. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, questions for Josh? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. Option A appears to be the logical one at this particular time for the reasons that Josh outlined, with the material costing and the labor ability in the fall being more plentiful, you would think. So option A looks like the best one, in my opinion.
Okay, any other comments from the other councillors? Is everyone in agreement with Councillor Barber? Councillor Charlton, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I think option A is a good option. Yeah, wait for the prices to come down a bit and have a winter project, and I think you'll be more competitive with labor as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Charlton. It appears, Josh, that A is the option. So does council want Josh to read the resolution again with the option in, or I think we should, please, Josh.
Certainly. All right, that report, Clerk 2521, entitled 25 Center Street Renovation Project Update, be received for information. And that council provides an exemption to the procurement policy to accept the fee proposal, building, structural, mechanical, and electrical engineering services from Strict, Baldinelli, and Monez dated June 16th, 2021. And further, that council directs staff to proceed with option A as outlined in the report, Clerk 2521.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 2621.
That report, Clerk 2621, entitled Road Occupancy Bylaw, be received for information. And that council considers giving first and second reading to the bylaw 3921 to regulate activity on municipal right-of-ways and public lands. And that council establishes $175 as the standard road occupancy permit fee. And further, that council directs staff to include the road occupancy permit fee in the next fees and charges bylaw update.
Okay, someone to move and second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Barber. Josh, is there anything extra you'd like to add to this report? It's pretty clear cut, but there may be something.
Through your worship, I'll keep it brief. The road occupancy bylaw that's before council this evening really in a nutshell sets out the minimum criteria for the acceptable use of municipal right-of-ways and similar public lands within the town. It establishes the processes and standards by which staff can issue road occupancy permits. In the past, we've typically managed this process through the building permit phase, but there are anomalies where someone would have good reason to request occupancy of the road without a building permit in place, and without that, we would have no grounds by which to hold securities to provide the necessary assurances for the quality of construction, et cetera. This is something that Rob, Director of Operations, and I have spoken about for some time, and in consultation with the CAO, we were able to put this bylaw in front of council for consideration this evening.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions for Josh on this report? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, could you give us an example of what might happen or is happening?
Certainly. Through your worship, and to Councillor Charlton, at this point, I would say one of the more common reasons that we would have for issuing such a permit would have to do with a severance process. Oftentimes when properties are severed, it involves the creation of an additional driveway, at which point there's a curb cut required, there's a construction standard required, and the municipal right-of-way would be impacted throughout that construction process. So really what this is a way for us to hold securities on these types of projects, and also to ensure that there's clear lines of communications with construction vendors, and that we're handling these types of requests in a consistent and timely manner moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman?
Sure, your worship. So does this mean like when they're working on a building and they need to block off the sidewalk, would this be included in that?
Yes, through your worship, and to Councillor Chapman, we would resolve those types of requests through this policy, but I should mention that when it comes to the full permit fee, typically that fee would be reserved for larger projects that do include road closures. Council will have noticed that there is a fair amount of discretion left to the delegated authority to staff within the bylaw, and the reason for that is that we don't want to be prohibitive in any way to these types of developments. Really what we're looking to do more than anything is recover costs when there's administrative duties that come as a result of these processes. But as far as smaller projects that impact municipal right-of-ways, we would be managing them through the policy without the permit fee.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 2721.
That report, Clerk 2721, entitled Elmer Elgin St. Thomas Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Adoption, be received for information, and that Council adopts the Elmer Elgin St. Thomas Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan as presented, and further that Council directs staff to publish the plan on the town webpage and notify the Minister of Community and Correctional Services of the plan adoption.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Chapman. Josh, did you want to just give a brief overview of this? This has been a lot of work. It's taken months to get this done. So maybe, I know you've attended almost every meeting and I have too. So maybe you could just give a quick little overview for everyone.
Certainly, through your worship and 2 members of council, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is a product of Bill 175, which is the Safer Ontario Act. All municipalities were required to prepare and adopt this plan prior to July 1st, 2021. Town of Elmer, County of Elgin, and City of St. Thomas jointly undertook this process under the guidance of a coordinating committee and an advisory committee. The plan sets out how partners across different sectors can work together and make the community safer, and also a more inclusive place where all residents are able to thrive. This type of planning recognizes that complex risks to safety and well-being cannot be addressed independently by any single organization in the community. So really, instead, the key goal of this process is to achieve greater coordination among relevant community stakeholders to encourage collaboration on issues and situations before they escalate. And some of the items that this includes are, engaging with the community, understanding local risk factors, reducing demand for emergency response and acute care, and also ensuring access to the right service provider at the right time.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Clerk 2821.
That report, Clerk 2821, entitled Approval of 2020 East Elgin Community Complex Audited Financial Statements, be received for information, and that the 2020 audited financial statements for the East Elgin Community Complex, as prepared by Scrimger and Company Chartered Accountants, and as presented by Auditor Christine Scrimger at the June 2nd, 2021 East Elgin Community Complex Board of Management meeting, be approved as submitted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is a resolution to approve the 2020 audited financial statements for the town of Aylmer.
That the 2020 audited financial statements for the town of Elmer, as prepared by Scrimger and Company Chartered Accountants and presented by Auditor Christine Scrimger at the June 21st, 2021 regular virtual council meeting, be approved as submitted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Barber. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're up to new business and matters of urgency. Okay, seeing none. First and second readings.
That council gives first and second reading to bylaw 3921, being a bylaw to regulate the activity on municipal right-of-ways and public lands.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Charlton. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next item up is to suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw 4021, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and Earth Corporation for the provision of water and wastewater billing and related services.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we move on to 3 readings.
That council approves and gives 3 readings to bylaw 4021, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the corporation of the town of Elmer and Earth Corp for the provision of water and wastewater billing and related services.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Inquiries by members. Okay. Statements and committee reports. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. The Elmer Secondary Water Board had a meeting recently. We also were the subject of an audit, which was successful. On budget year to date, we've had, the water system has had no complaints or matters of concern and 100% compliant. When you consider that missing the dotting of an I or crossing the T would affect that compliance rating. Kudos to the staff and all those involved for making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber, for that report. Sounds great. Are there any other statements or committee reports this evening? Okay, seeing none. There is no report of the mayor this evening. Notice of motion. So we will move to meeting closed to the public.
That council move into a meeting closed to the public at 8:09 p.m. to discuss the following matters. Item 15.1, Chief Administrative Officer, Report CAO 2921, Land Disposition Proposals relating to Talbot Street property. Item closed to the public pursuant to Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton, questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So we'll move into closed session shortly.
This conference is no longer being recorded.